All right, so this is a quick video to review the sources from the Patriot movement, which involves some of the most important documents, people, and groups that helped lead the Americans toward their independence. So the first one is a primary source called Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. This was a speech given by Patrick Henry in March of 1775. This is right before the first shots of the American Revolution were fired. He's speaking to a group of colonists in Virginia. Virginia was the largest, the most powerful, the strongest colony at the time. And he's trying to argue to these individuals that they should fight for their liberty, and if not, they should be willing to die trying. So he's going to argue that they've reached a point of no return, and the colonists need to fight back. So in this speech, he gives some very strong language and makes some very strong comparisons between the colonists and slaves themselves, ironically enough, where he's going to try to get Virginia to support this cause of liberty. So down below in his speech are some excerpts of what he believes the colonists should do. So he compares the experience of being a colonist under British rule to the experience of slavery. So he says, I consider this as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. If we wish to be free, then we must not abandon our mission. We are appealing to God in our mission. He says that we are dealing with a formidable, a strong enemy, but that things will only get worse. So he asks the colonists, when shall we be stronger? Will we be stronger next week or the year after that? Or will it be when we have British soldiers stationed in every colonist's home? So he's kind of saying, strike now because things aren't going to get any easier. And then at the end, he says, what do you want? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? He says, I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. And so that slogan has become a very famous one in American history, this call to action for the colonists. So that's Patrick Henry's Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. Next is a pamphlet series called Common Sense, written by a man named Thomas Paine. This is written in a series of pamphlets and distributed throughout the colonies. It was incredibly widely read because it was written in very common language that common people in the colonies would be able to understand. So it's not meant to be confusing. It's not meant to be very high level. It's meant to appeal to the masses and written in a way that anyone in the colonies would be able to understand. So it was published throughout the colonies and became a very influential document in convincing the general population in the colonies to want independence from Britain. So published at the start of January of 1776, this was very important in the lead up to the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. So in Common Sense, some of the things that Thomas Paine argues, he points out that Britain is this tiny little island, that it's thousands of miles away across an ocean. So to have to travel 3,000 or 4,000 miles, he says, to make a request of the British and then wait 4 or 5 months for an answer, which takes 5 or 6 more months to explain it, it's laughable. So he points out that it's just common sense. It's ridiculous that this tiny island can manage an entire continent. He also points out that monarchy, so a government in which a king is in power, has covered the whole world in blood and ashes. It's a form of government with which the word of God disagrees. So he appeals to religion that monarchy is an improper government, that it goes against what God would want. So what we are trying to do is to overthrow the natural disease of monarchy. And then finally, he says that the cause of the Patriots, the sun has never shined on a cause of greater worth, that this is a natural right, that government of our own is something that God would want. So he's making these arguments to the colonists to try to persuade them in very simple language with very easily understood arguments that the colonists should be free from the British. So that is Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Next is very famous, the Declaration of Independence. So this was written by Thomas Jefferson as the official declaration that the colonists wish to be free. So this is being written to King George III to inform him of the reasons why the colonists want their independence. And in it, he makes strong arguments about the rights of people, that all men are created equal, that they have certain unalienable rights or rights that can't be taken away, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So he then goes on to give a list of the reasons why the colonists are going to be free, why they are no longer subject to British rule, and that they are now considered a separate and independent nation. So the Declaration of Independence is this announcement, this letter to King George III explaining the breakup, so why the colonists are leaving the British. Okay, so after that, what did things look like in the colonies? It's important to keep in mind that not every colonist wanted independence. Many colonists wanted to remain loyal to the British for various reasons. So what we have here in this secondary source is a description of loyalists, fence sitters, and patriots. So many colonists were patriots, and those are the ones that we call, or what we refer to as the colonists who wanted independence. Many were loyalists. They wanted to remain loyal to the king. And some were fence sitters, so they were in between, and that's what many of these patriots were trying to influence. They tried to convince them to join their side. So things like common sense were very influential in getting more people to join the patriot movement. The debate between these loyalists and patriots was often very divisive. So this source mentions that within even families, people could be divided on whether or not they believe the colonies should be independent. So Benjamin Franklin, the famous patriot, his own son was a loyalist, and it kind of ended their relationship. So this debate between the loyalists and the patriots was incredibly important. And one way that the Patriot movement was progressed is through the use of committees of correspondence. So these are essentially letter-writing organizations, some of them formed by Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty, to try and communicate ideas and frustrations throughout the colonies. So as the colonists built toward the revolution against the British, there were these letter-writing campaigns throughout towns, throughout colonies, that eventually grew to the point that all the colonies were communicating with each other. They're sharing their frustrations with the British. And so this became one of the best ways for the colonists to organize themselves against the British. Obviously, there was no such thing as Twitter or social media of any kind, and so the best that they could do to kind of organize themselves and communicate and kind of build some unity against the British was through these letter-writing organizations, the Committees of Correspondence. So I hope this helps understand some of the key documents and ways that the colonists built their patriot movement against the British. Thanks for watching.